Hello and welcome to episode number 88 of the Big Time Strength Podcast. I'm really excited today, guys, to have on Coach Steve Barrick. He's at the University of Indianapolis. They're in our conference, and from a football standpoint, they kick the crap out of us every year. So I'm excited to talk to Coach, kind of maybe learn some of his secrets. So before we get to Coach, let's talk through our amazing sponsors that support our podcast. And Team Builder, our number one sponsor. They've been with us for a long time now, and more than ever, right now during this coronavirus period, a lot of people are taking advantage of what they can offer, and they've been spectacular with us at Jewel and our athletes as well. So Team Builder, they're the leading software for high schools and colleges by providing coaches the ability to write programs online, generate over 13 reports, and even train athletes remotely for side income. Right now, if you sign up with code BIGTIME, you'll receive a free APRE programming template, which works automatically within Team Builder. No more spreadsheets and workout cards to track training maxes that change day by day. Automate your programming without outsourcing your programming with Team Builder. Again, contact Hewitt and his staff. Their information is in our show notes. They do a spectacular job and really fortunate and appreciative of them supporting our show. Our second sponsor is Powerlift. They are the leading manufacturer and distributor of heavy-duty strength training equipment for collegiate and high school athletic performance coaches around the world. Powerlift brings over 20 years of experience to the strength conditioning world. All products are manufactured in the state-of-the-art facility in Jefferson, Iowa. They are proud to support all coaches making the big time where they are at. Mike Richardson is our local rep here. His contact information is in the show notes. They are doing a spectacular job as well. And I know if you can support them during these trying times in the coronavirus period, that would be very much appreciated, and we appreciate them sponsoring our show. So before we get to Coach today, I do want to mention just real quick, obviously we have to change things up a little bit, and a lot of times I will record these podcasts at Jewel, or maybe my Wi-Fi is a little better. So if we do have maybe a skip or something happen from an audio standpoint in the middle of this, I do apologize, but we are making the best out of this that we can. My Wi-Fi at home can be a little spotty at times. And if you do hear a 2-year-old yelling in the background, just deal with it. My son's running around, and it's about that time of night. So, all right, that's enough for me. I want to get to Coach Steve Barrick here. Again, he's at the University of Indianapolis. Coach, how you doing?
Great, man. How are you?
Doing fantastic. And why don't you get us started here by just sharing a little bit about your journey through strength conditioning so far and where you're at right now.
Okay. Well, first, thanks for having me on. I've really kind of admired this podcast for quite a while, and I think it's a real big deal to feature, strength coaches at smaller schools who are doing tremendous work. So that's definitely a credit to you and what you're doing with this. But as far as I'm concerned, I started off. I went to Franklin College, D3 school, played football. I think you hear this a lot from a lot of guys, but I think I was more into the preparation part than I really was as a player. But I enjoyed the lifting part. I never had a strength coach through high school. I never had a strength coach through college. I had position coaches that coached me up in strength and conditioning, and they did a great job to the best of their ability, but I never had a coach that was directly just focused on the programming part, putting us through specific training cycles and those kind of things. So I never had that, but, I went on after college. I wanted to stay competitive. So got into powerlifting, and I trained a ton. And I think people now would laugh because, I put in my 30 to 45 minutes a day, maybe, or something at school, because that's about all the time we have to train. But we used to have marathon type trainings and really get into it and compete and travel and do those things. So I was originally a social worker to begin with, and realized that very, very special people such as my wife are social workers, and I'm not one of those people. So, we can talk about this later, but I take a lot of the things that I learned as a social worker to my job as a strength coach. But, I needed something different. I got into coaching football, and I wanted to coach in the weight room. So I went around, I contacted every high school coach in the state of Indiana. I think I had 2 responses back, but fortunately one of them gave me an opportunity. Mike Gillen at Indian Creek High School gave me an opportunity. So for 7 years, I worked for a stipend and worked in the weight room, did stuff before school, did stuff after school, did stuff on the weekends, those kind of things while working a job. And like I said, did that for 7 years. Really, I traveled around. I learned from as many people as I possibly could during that time how to build a program up. Went on to another local high school, Franklin Community High School, where I was there for a year full time. And in the meantime, I went back, got an undergrad in exercise science from the University of Indianapolis, and I just stopped in the AD's office. And I have a very weird road to being where I'm at, but and I think it ticks people off sometimes because I just really got lucky, to be quite honest with you. I stopped in the AD's office, introduced myself, told her what I wanted to do. Didn't go anywhere at the time. And a few years later, I'm in grad school there, and they open up a position at University of Indianapolis. Now, granted, in the beginning, it was contracted out through the hospital. So I went through the interview process, and it was 3 interviews. I mean, it was intimidating. If you'd been a younger kid at the time, it'd have been very intimidating. I was 31 years old at the time, so I could handle a little bit better. And lo and behold, after 3 interviews, man, they called me up and I got the job. And I got the job over some people that I probably shouldn't have got the job over. Part of it was the fact I was a UND person. And, our athletic director, Sue Willie, who's retiring after this year, took a big chance on me. I'm forever in her debt. Absolute greatest boss you could ever ask for. What she's done for that athletic department is just outstanding. But she, believes in UND people, and it makes people, I think, work very hard for her. And I know that's the case for me. But, I was all about training. I was all about learning. I was all about training. And that's how I am today, man. I mean, it's just kind of the way it all happened. It was by chance, really. It was very much who you know. They always say it's who you know. That was 100% the case for me. We had a lot of success at the high schools that I was at, so there was that piece to it. I mean, we were doing some good training. Kids were having success. It was great. But, so that's kind of led me where I'm at now.
Yeah, and there's definitely a part of who you know, but I think you're selling yourself maybe short a little bit. You've obviously were prepared for it. I've got 3 follow-ups on your little intro here. I'm trying to decide which way I want to go with it first. But you spent 7 years working on a stipend, contacting every coach in Iowa just to find a spot. So you put the work in, and you're learning during that time, and you're working your tail off to get better. So you're prepped for that when that opportunity came. So I guess let's start with that. Maybe the main difference you saw between the high school and the collegiate setting when training athletes?
Really, I think what sold me to the University of Indianapolis was the developmental side of it. Because I still feel like at a Division II school, and you know this as well as I do, there's still a big developmental piece to it. And that maybe some Division I, people that have come up through the Division I ranks their entire career may not see. But being a high school coach will really open your eyes to the developmental side of things. I mean, strength coaching really kind of comes to a peak when you've got skinny little kids or really overweight kids who've never done a thing in their entire life. And then all of a sudden they're dropped off at your doorstep for you to train them. It forces you to really take them from nothing to, whatever you can. So that, and you really see it at the high school level. At the collegiate level, they come in with a little bit more experience. I think at our level, it's like you've got kids who have never done anything before, who have minimal weight room experience. You've got kids who've competed in weightlifting. I mean, it's the spectrum is so big. That's the biggest difference between, I think, the college and high school rank is the level of, experience that they have or maybe don't have. But, is that always a good thing? I'm not sure. If they're well coached, it's a great thing. If they're not well coached, you have a lot of habits that you have to break. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is breaking a lot of habits at college versus, really taking them from point zero when they're in high school.
Right. Yeah. And I part of this podcast is my partner here, Coach Preston. He talks to high school coaches that we have on the show. And man, I just respect the heck out of those coaches. They do an amazing job. And obviously you've been on both sides of it too. So I always like to just kind of hear the perspective from coaches who have done both and kind of what their opinion is. But one more thing I had kind of on just off your background is if I picked up on right, you were the first full-time strength coach at Indy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had to kind of start the program, I assume.
Right.
So maybe walk me through that. Maybe if you can think back to those first year or so, what was it like building a program basically from scratch or whatever you had to work with?
Yeah. So I think sometimes when you're the first coach at a school, the school may not always understand what really needs to go into it. The great thing about the University of Indianapolis is they really listened to everything that I said, took into account everything that I felt like we needed. And I always say I have a needs list and I have a wants list. And I'm very fortunate that the things that I've kind of gone to the table for, I've been able to get. But, we started off in a 2,200 square foot weight room. It was set up more for a community type, workout facility. And so I had to build platforms. I had to rearrange some things. I put some equipment out in the hallway, and, sometimes people don't like it when you just move stuff out of the room, but I've done that every place I've been. But I really wanted to drive home the fact that, we're going to run this thing a certain way, and wrong, right, or indifferent, it's the way, we're going to go, and we're going to make some mistakes along the way. But, the weight room design needed to be a way that made it coachable. And I knew right off the bat, because when I first got there, we were at about 550 athletes, and I was the only coach. I was fortunate enough to get a couple interns at the time. And, at that time, anybody that was willing to volunteer, I would take them. And I was very fortunate that the ones that did volunteer for me did a tremendous job. But I wasn't much of a delegator at that time. I very much wanted everything to be done my way. I wanted to be the one to do it. And, I think at 31 years old, I had the energy to do that. And so, I eventually got a part-time assistant. Part-time assistant turned into a full-time assistant. Along the way, we were designing the new weight room at the time the one that we're currently in. And, that weight room design was all about how can we, bring in as many athletes as we possibly can, still make the room coachable, make it efficient. How are we going to set this up? So we got time to do that. And I was very lucky that I was able to design my own weight room. And, it's tough because you got to stay within the budget, but, I hope that kind of answers the question. But, very, very tough in the beginning. You have a whiteboard and you have every team's lifts all over the board. I mean, it's looking back, it's like, man, how did we not get confused on what we were doing? Like, how did we pull this off? I have no idea how we pulled this off, but we did. Kids took pride in the room. We utilized the hallways. We utilized the gym. We disrupted classrooms and got yelled at for that. We I mean, we utilized every space, every square inch of space we could find. I mean, you know, and I'd have to run back and forth between the weight room and the hallways and run all over the place. And we weren't able to do some of the things that we do now, but you know, when it came down to it, the nuts and bolts of the program we were able to do.
Right. And everybody got better still and everybody survived. So, I mean, you know, I think we get wrapped up a lot
Yeah.
on just making everything perfect. Just from my experience, I guess, like I look back just on my shorter stint, you know, 4 years ago when I started Jewel, and I think back on just how much stuff has changed. I think because I was in a similar position, it was just me. We only had around 400 athletes, but and then I just think back to what we're doing now, we didn't do then. But at the time, I was like, man, we're doing a lot of really good things.
Yep.
But then, like right now, I'm thinking like, man, we weren't doing near as much, or I don't know how that all happened. I don't remember, but it's cool. As you were saying that, it kind of made me think back to my similar experience too. Is pretty cool. So I want to get into now. You know, you've been there. Um, how long you been there, Coach? 10 years.
10 years.
10 years. Awesome. So describe the culture for me. You know, what's the culture of your program? And I would like to know too, like, has that changed over those 10 years?
Yeah. I'm a firm believer that the culture of your program has to really coincide with the culture of your entire department. And so I'm kind of answering your second question first, but it has not really changed too much. Now, obviously every coach is different. You know, I'm talking sport coaches, they're all going to have a little bit different style of coaching, a little bit more laid back, a little more detailed, those kind of things. So you got to take those things into account because, you know, they recruit different kids and those kind of things. But the culture of our weight room is very much understood by our athletes. It's a business-like atmosphere when you walk in. The expectation is the same. As soon as you enter in those doors, you know, we got something for you to do. What I cannot stand is when kids will, you know, stand around and you know, waste time. I don't want any time wasted. So we're going to come in, we're going to start doing some mobility work. We're going to start doing some soft tissue work. We're going to do those things. And, you know, that time is valuable to me because it allows me to see the energy level of the room on that particular day with that particular group. You know, if they're all chatty and loud, and you've heard Buddy Morris, I think, say this before, you know, that it can really kind of dictate the way your day is going to go. And if you have to make some changes on the fly, which we do, if they're chatty and loud and you can't get them to stop, I mean, we could have a pretty good day, you know. And our kids know that when it's time to go, it's time to go. When that whistle blows and we start to warm up, it's attention to detail. It's focus. It's let's start thinking, you know, turn our attention towards what we're doing in training that day. And so it's pretty simple. I think if, you know, we kind of go by a motto, it's simple. It's win. And you know, so we kind of have the little, this is what we kind of use and we always have. We put the flying eye right there, and our kids take a lot of pride in that. But it's not just winning in athletics. You know, and this came from our athletic department and from our athletic director and from our former head football coach, Bob Bartolomeo. It's, you know, first and foremost, we want to get a UND degree. So we want to win in the classroom. We want to win in the community. So we want to be good people in the community, good people around campus, represent the campus well. And then third is then winning in your kind of your athletic arena. So win on the field, win on the court, win in the pool, win on the mat, that kind of thing. And, you know, so there's a lot of life lessons that go into that because we play a part just like anybody else in helping these kids do that. You know, I think a lot of strength coaches may not think that they play a big role in helping a kid get their degree, but I disagree with that. I think we do. I think the discipline that you get from the weight room, I think that the time management skills, those kind of things are very important. And I mean, I think there's a reason why you see the graduation rate of your athletes is sometimes higher than the graduation rate of your general population. It's not a knock on anybody. I'm just saying, we force them to have time management. We force them to eat well. They're going to sleep more because, they're working hard. And, I really think that the things that those things that you work on in the weight room really do, carry over to better practice habits, better lifting habits. And it really does kind of help us win in athletics as well. So, but obviously good recruiting goes a long way. You got to have some talent, but if you try to if you have a good mix of talent and extremely hard work in every area of your athletic endeavor in your school and everything like that, you've got a chance.
Well, I loved your I think what you're saying there with the win concept and how that's in line with the whole athletic department. I think that's something that maybe I've struggled with in the past, and I think a lot of coaches do, and I think a lot of departments do. I'm interested to see what you had to say on this. Is like, I think some people have almost like a silo approach to where like the weight room is its own separate thing. Whatever you do in there, it's great. We do our own stuff over here on the field or whatever it is with each sport. And I think most coaches agree that's not the best way to do it. It's like you got to have this holistic approach, and everybody's on the same page. Everybody's pushing toward the same direction. Do you think just by you guys using this win, and you kind of had this overall win mentality, and even if it comes down to the logo itself, do you think that helps tie into breaking down those silos or whatever it is? Do you have any? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? It's not really a question. I just kind of a statement, I guess.
Yeah. We have a very holistic approach. I mean, we are so much on the same page. It's unbelievable. And even when we have turnover at a position from a coaching standpoint, they still fall into that because the culture is so ingrained that I truly believe the hires are made based on the people that can kind of fall into that culture and understand that culture and can adapt a little bit to that. Because I mean, it's like, and this is the way I always put it, it's like a puzzle. Like we need every piece to be hitting on all cylinders in order to be successful. Every coach has to be on the same page with the administration, has to be on the same page with our support staff. So, we work tirelessly with athletic training. Not a day goes by when we're not working with the athletic trainers in some form or fashion. And then we're all working with the coaches. The coaches know what we're doing in the weight room. We know what they're doing at practice. The communication piece is incredible there. And, I wouldn't say when I started the job, I was the ultimate communicator, but I became a good communicator because of the people I was working with. And it's a big reason why, big reason why I love going to work every day and love the UIndy family and that kind of thing is because, we're just all so on the same page and hitting on all cylinders. And I think that's a very, very important piece to being successful across the board.
Yeah, I think it is too. And I think that's something that we miss a little bit. Maybe I'm just speaking from my experience, but that communication is huge. And I think that's so easy to kind of sit in your corner or my closet that my office is in the weight room and, just kind of stay there and, wonder why coaches aren't doing this or whatever, instead of just having those conversations with them to make sure your communication is on the same page. And that sounds like you guys got it all figured out, which is great. So what I want to move to next, coach, is you kind of mentioned a couple maybe, but what's maybe like a tough hurdle you've had to overcome during your time at UND, or maybe even back to the high school days?
Yeah, I would say anytime anybody asks me this question, I would say that the toughest hurdle is, and I think anybody probably watching this podcast that's a small school coach is going to agree with this, is going to be managing um, how your staff works with a tough scheduling issue. Um, Scheduling is the hardest part of the job. And, how do we work with the academic side? You know, we work really hard to make sure that, we can get a flow going in the weight room every hour on the hour. I think, you talk about having these big chunks of time in which you train. We're fortunate to where we can really kind of work through the entire day. I mean, I think we have like the 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock hours where, 12 to 1 is a time frame that allows us to eat lunch and meet maybe a little bit, lift. I think it's important for the staff to lift and for myself to, do something. And then, but then we start back up at 1 and we go till 6. So it's basically 6 a.m. to noon and 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And, so the toughest hurdle is making sure that we can have, the number of kids in the weight room that we can coach. So I have myself, I have a full-time assistant, and I have 2 graduate assistants. I treat my graduate assistants as if they're full-time coaches. And so it's very important that those grad assistants are on top of their game. And a lot of times the way I hire grad assistants is that usually they intern for me first. And that way I get at least a semester or a summer of knowing what they're capable of, watching them grow, seeing if they're, if they're punctual, how hard they work, how dependable are they. And I'm losing both of my GAs, after May. I mean, it got cut short, obviously, but and I'm telling those guys have already, one's going to LSU to intern and one's already got a head high school job here in Indiana. And so I think that speaks volumes for how good those guys are. And so I'm going to miss them tremendously, but I've got an intern coming in that's going to be one of my next GAs. And then I'm it's kind of tough to make a hire right now. I would love to make a hire based on an intern that I have in the summertime, but I think I'm going to have to, we're working on getting one that's got some really good recommendations. And I think she's going to do an excellent job for us if she accepts the position. But, I'm excited, and but it's going to be, kind of starting over. And, I think that's another hurdle is how you manage your staff and those kind of things. When there is some turnover, I'm very fortunate. My assistant, Matt Wagner, who's done an outstanding job. He's been with me he was an intern, he was a GA, and then he became my full-time assistant. I think he's been with me for 6 years, and he was a player for us, I think, when I first got there. So I think he's been there almost the whole 10 years that I've been there. But he knows the program inside and out, works with our return to play guys in terms of football. And on top of that, works with, the 6 teams that he has as well. And so he makes the thing go, I'm telling you. And but that's, I kind of go back to what I said earlier. I didn't delegate when I first started. Now I feel like I delegate a ton. And I learned that from some of the coaches that I worked with, sport coaches. They're like, man, you got to start delegating. And at the time it was unheard of for me. I was like, I got to do this all. But now I've learned to trust, and because of that, it's made our program a lot better.
Well, dang it, you stole my next follow-up question. So that was going to be my question. So maybe you can expand on this a little bit. I'll go ahead and ask it. When you said that earlier, it was just you with 700 or 500 athletes at the time.
Yeah.
I think you're up to what, 700 now?
We're close to 700. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you've gotten some assistants and maybe some GAs now. Maybe walk me through that process of learning how to delegate.
You cut out there for a second, Coach.
So the question was, maybe just walk me through that process of, as you've gained more staff, learning how to delegate.
Well, um, I've been able to delegate because, again, like I said, I did take them on as interns, and they start off. Anytime somebody comes in and interns for us in the beginning, they're gonna shadow. I mean, there's the shadowing piece. How many questions are you asking? Those kind of things. There's a way to build trust with me, and it's going to take a lot of interaction. It's going to take a lot of hard work, that kind of thing. Once I feel comfortable with your ability to do that, then now I feel like, okay, work with this person. We got a new transfer that's come in or something like that. Take them through our Olympic lifting progressions, take them through our squat progression, take them through everything. And because I'll have other coaches working with the teams, I can almost kind of watch that individual coach our athletes. I'm not saying I'm not coaching. I mean, I'm out there coaching, but I'm also watching my other coaches to make sure that they're doing things the right way. And I'm almost grading them. I mean, I've got pen and paper in my hand almost at all times and taking notes. And okay, you've done a great job with this one. Now let's work with this group. Okay, so we have 12 platforms in our weight room that are the rack and the platform are all one station. So all right, take these 4 stations right here, and let's see you work with 12 kids, 12 athletes. And again, we go through the whole process again. How are you communicating? How are you working with these 12 athletes? If I don't like it, I'll butt in. I mean, I'm always butting in, and I'm always giving my feedback and my opinions, and I'm not afraid to do that. But if I like what they're doing, hey, let's go. Keep going. And I've had say, when they see me walk away, it's almost a feeling of comfort, because it's like they feel like I feel comfortable with them. And then from there, man, I mean, you sometimes you got to take a risk and take a chance, but at some point you have to turn a large group or even a whole team over to one of your graduate assistants or whatever. And I've been very, very lucky. I've had 4 GAs over the last 4 years, and I've been very fortunate. They're all they all have jobs as strength coaches now. They've all taken over their own programs, those kind of things, and they've done a great job. So I'm not taking credit for any of that. I'm just I've been blessed with good people.
Well, good programs attract good people, so I will give you some credit for it too. So
I appreciate that.
No, that's great, Coach, and I appreciate your thoughts on that. That's I can relate to that a lot, and I just something I had to get over, honestly, was just like, my GAs or maybe an intern would accomplish the task, but it wasn't necessarily the way I would have done it.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting over that, and it's been a growing thing for me. I don't know if you've experienced that, but
that's the learning piece for us.
Right.
Because it's hard for us to get out and really observe other programs, and learning becomes very, very tough in our situation because we do spend so much time with our programs and our teams and our coaches and our athletic training staff. We spend so much time with them. When do we have time? I mean, you can crack open a book or something,
right?
But so I feel like when I bring in these coaches, they've been other places sometimes. I'm learning from them, and let's put it to work. Let's see if it works. I'm not saying that we're using trial and error with our athletes, so to speak, but if they're staying within our umbrella of our philosophy, then then let's see how this goes. Let's try this. Let's make sure that we're doing things that are, you know, within the principles that we're training under. But you know, let's see how it goes. And I learn stuff from my kids all the time.
Yeah, and that's a great way for us to learn. And I think it's obviously that's how my mentor Joe Quinn at Northwest Missouri State treated me as an intern, and I went from an intern to his GA. You know, and that's the best way for them to learn too. So, you know, you kind of led me in my perfect segue here too into your training principles. So let's talk a little training, switch gears a little bit. Maybe what is your training philosophy or principles or whatever you want to say with your athletes there at Indy?
We're very simple. We're very simple. We're very principle based. So I know is it McKeefery, I think, or something. You know, he's not philosophy based. He's principle based. I think we're that way too. You know, and we kind of have a motto for that we kind of go by. And I tell my coaches, I want you to have this kind of mindset overall and every single day when you're on the floor. And I didn't make this up. I got this from, I think, Chris Carlisle with the Seahawks, and then Mark Garrett at Crown Point High School said it too. And I was like, this really sounds like the way I do things, but it's do it right, do it fast, and then do it heavy. And so what does that mean? That means technique is first on everything. We're going to be so technical that it's crazy. Now, I say that I don't want to get so technical that we can't make progress. That's not what I'm saying. But I mean, you know how it is. If we're not doing things proficiently from a technical standpoint, we're really not going to get anything out of it. There's not going to be much carryover, you know, when it comes to the athletic side of it. I don't want to say that we're Olympic based, but Olympic lifts are a big part of what we do. And the Olympic side of things kind of dictates the way that we squat. And I'll go into that here in a second, but, and it, you know, the way that we do a lot of our basic strength movements, but, you know, do it fast. Okay. Once the technique is proficient in our eyes, then it becomes about the rate of speed. And I don't have much in terms of the technological side of things. I'm trying to get to that point. But again, it's gonna take some money and some different things, and it's kind of hard to come by. But you know, I trust the coach's eye at this point. And so rate of speed is going to be big, and then heavy is a relative term for us. And I've found that if I remember those three things on a daily basis, whenever I'm training any team, that, you know, I don't chase numbers. I don't have to. It just kind of happens at that point. And I want our athletes to understand that as well. Like, you know, how well I'm more impressed by seeing a lighter lift done extremely fast and extremely well versus extremely heavy and not really athletic, not really. Now, and then you get a dog sometimes that does all three. And that's what we're shooting for, you know? And, but, you know, and I say this all the time, we're not going to blow anybody away with our numbers, so to speak. You've always got to, like, we've got a guy that front squats 500 pounds, but we don't have a lot. We don't have two guys that front squat 500 pounds. So you always have the outlier type of guy, but, you know, but we train by that kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a philosophy or a motto or whatever. But it really drives home the technical part. Now, if the technique looks good, the speed looks good, and then all of a sudden it starts to get sloppy when you start to get heavy, boom, you rewind. Let's go back. All right, let's recheck the technique. You know, do we have to go through maybe some complexes to work on the technical side of this to fix? A big part of being a coach, and you know this, is finding the errors and then fixing those and doing that. But we keep things so simple. I mean, our exercise pool, I guess, so to speak, is so simple because I want our athletes to always know what we're doing. If in a situation like this, I feel comfortable because our kids know the program. I mean, we don't have so much variation that they're going to be confused if they have to train without us. And so, I mean, we have variation and things like that, but I mean, you know, it's very simple. I mean, we use a lot of clusters. We use a lot of tempos. So we do a lot of eccentrics, a lot of isometrics. And that's especially in the learning phases. I mean, you're going to see a tempo put to just about everything that we do at some point in time. And, you know, it's time under tension, and, you know, and so we're very, like, let's take squat, for instance. The front squat's our main squat. Now, what does that mean for back squat? You know, back squat's a little bit more of a sub-max, higher volume lift. We spend a lot of time with it. We get very strong at it by doing it that way. You know, we do back squat. Our back squat numbers are going to be kind of dictated by our front squat to an extent. But we use a lot of indicator days. So I don't do a ton of maxing. We have indicator days, which are certain days at certain percentages for certain reps. So if I'm hitting 85% for 5, and that bar is flying, that bar speed's for the technique is good, proficient, and the speed's there, we're going to jump that training max up. And, you know, next thing you know, it's funny because you get a kid who's a freshman or a sophomore, and he's like, Coach, I'm, you know, 20 pounds over what I did in high school, and I'm doing it for 3 reps. I'm doing it for 5 reps, you know. And so I would say this, outside of a couple of lifts, our kids don't know what their true 1 rep max back squat is. They don't. They can probably tell you what their front squat max is, but, you know, and then they're clean. But when it comes to bench, back squat, they don't know what it's all based on those indicator days. And then we can adjust based on what we're seeing. And it takes a lot of, I mean, it's not easy. It's subjective. But, you know, this is where the trust comes in, and I want to be able to see, you know, if we're not sure on a kid, we won't adjust anything, and we'll just go from there. And then an indicator day can kind of happen at any time in our program. And, like I said, if the oven's hot, we cook, you know, but like I said, if we're coming in and it's a day where they're dead and they've been doing a lot in practice, or they've been doing a lot with their coach, and we're scheduled to do something heavy that day, we'll back those percentages off. We're very much a percentage-based program, but it's really a guideline, in my opinion. Now, I tell the kids, stick to these percentages. You know, you're sticking to the percentages no matter what. But I walk around and make changes all the time for them, and you know, if they're feeling it and they go, and boom, it's an indicator day where, like I said, we're hitting 85% for 5, and they maybe hit a little bit over 85% and they knock it out of the park, we jump that number up, and we just kind of keep progressing them that way. I was a little scared to do that. It's very nonlinear, but I was a little scared to do that in the beginning, but it's worked well for us. And, you know, and another thing, and I ramble, so if you got to stop me, but
You're good, Coach. Go for it.
But we alternate weeks. So, you know, we have 1 week that's an emphasis on going a little bit heavier from an Olympic standpoint. Then our next week is going to be going a little bit heavier from our strength standpoint. And there might be times early in our cycles, like when we first get back from, let's take a fall sport, when we get back from Christmas break, we might be a little bit more linear in the beginning with that. But eventually we get to that point where we are alternating weeks, and it gives them an emphasis. Okay, this is going to be a heavier Olympic week. So, you know, we're going to push a little bit heavier on our cleans, on our cleans from the blocks, on our push press. If we've worked to the point where we're jerk, you know, doing a heavy jerk, then it'll be heavier there. And then, you know, the following week, we're going to back that off a little bit, work a ton of technique, and push our squats, our single leg movements, and our pressing and those kind of things a little bit more. And I was a little hesitant to do this a few years ago, and I kept talking to some different coaches and throwing this idea around. And I talked to one particular coach that I have a lot of respect for, and he does a tremendous job. And he said, "This is the way that we do it. I think this is the way. Give it a try." So I did, and man, I mean, it made our kids. I mean, we have a good training atmosphere day in and day out, and it's nothing sexy. There's nothing cute. We get in there and our kids know what to expect, and they train their tails off, and then we get out. I mean, I'm not killing them. I'm not a big pound the chest, rah rah yelling guy. I'm pretty subdued. I mean, my kids will tell you I lose it every once in a while, but I have a passion just for coaching. I mean, I want to coach. I didn't get into this to be that loud, obnoxious type of coach. I mean, I want to coach technique. I want to get them better. I want to walk into a weight room and see us moving very well. I'm more impressed by that than I am real heavy weight being thrown around. So, when it's time to go, we go. But I like the progression. I like seeing it. It's a cumulative thing over, a 4 to 5 year time span, in my opinion.
Coach, that was awesome, and I took a bunch of notes from that. That's really good stuff there, and I am curious. I love this, just the simplicity of just do it right, do it fast, do it heavy. What I'm curious is, has it always been that way, or early on, maybe in your coaching career, maybe clear back to where you're in high school, was it that simple for you? And maybe, I don't know, just answer that question. Maybe I don't want to put ideas in your head.
So that so I do have a story for that. So when I first started, it was all about lifting heavyweight with high school kids. And I mean, I wanted to keep them safe. I knew I had to do that. But it was about at what cost? Technically, how much of a technician did I really feel like I was? Probably not much. So I took our kids to a lift meet, and I walked in and I saw Milan High School. So Milan High School is the high school that the movie Hoosiers is based off of. And I saw how their kids were lifting. And I was like, my kids don't look like their kids, but I like the way their kids look. The way they pulled around the bar, the way they caught, I mean, the snatches, the cleans, I mean, we were getting ready to do a lift contest that was power clean, bench press, and squat. And you got these kids over here like, whoa, what is going on? So I went up to their coach. His name's Mark Garrett. He's the guy at Crown Point High School right now, and he's been there for quite a while. And I said, I'll never forget, I said, I want my kids to look like yours. And so that started a mentorship for me that I still live by. I take his kids a lot of times and turn them into my interns and graduate assistants, because they're all phenomenal lifters. They're technically sound and they're so strong. And, he's had a lot of success. But I realized at that point I needed to be a better technical coach. And it's just by seeing the way that his kids were lifting versus the way my kids were lifting. And I left there not even worried about where my guys' numbers were. I wasn't worried about that. I said, I want my kids to lift the way that those kids lifted. And from that point on, man, I dove in head first and really got to work on, teaching the technique. I'm a firm believer. If you can teach the Olympic lifts well and very proficiently, you can teach anything in a weight room.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And Coach, I would say I love your story there, and I think it shows a lot of your humility, because I think a lot of coaches would see, kids from another school moving really well and say, "Oh, it must be nice to have those kids. I wish I had those kids. They're the good athletes. My kids suck." It's like, no, but for you to go to that coach and say, "Hey, teach me how you're coaching them," says a lot about you as a coach. So, Coach, this has been great, and I really appreciate your time, spending with us, and this has been a great conversation, and I've got like 2 pages of notes here, so I really appreciate it. But let's wrap this thing up, let you get on with the rest of your night with your family, and I do have just kind of 4 quick finisher questions for you, if you're ready for it.
Okay.
This is a new one, and I've been enjoying this one. What's your most embarrassing moment you've had coaching in front of your athletes?
Oh, man. So this tends to happen on occasion, and I don't know if people would see this as a real embarrassing thing or what, but I yell at the top of my lungs sometimes about attention to detail, attention to detail, attention to detail. And then there are so many times when I'll have a workout posted and the number of sets won't match the number of percentages that I have or something like that. And my kids jump on me like no other about that. And it's really, you're trying to be, hey, attention to detail, focus. And you can't help but laugh when you've made a mistake like that and they catch on and they start laughing. And like I said, I have a tremendous relationship with my kids. I love my kids. I love everything about the job and the place I'm at. And but I think that really kind of lightens things up sometimes. And sometimes it makes the whole lift better, Sometimes it's like, hey, like I need to chill out. But it is kind of embarrassing when you've made that kind of mistake when all you're preaching to them is attention to detail.
Yeah, no, I get that. Like I'll be yelling out like, it's 3 sets of 5, and then you look on the card or whatever, and it's 3 sets of 4. And like,
Yep.
Never mind, it's 3 by 5. Or 3 by 4. You're right. Sorry.
But we program for so many teams and have so many. You're gonna make those mistakes.
Yeah. Sometimes a kid will come up to me like, "Coach, what's the sets and reps on this?" I'm like, I don't know, man.
So I don't know. I just wrote it.
I programmed 10 teams when I was writing yours, so I don't know. Check it out. I don't know. Ask a teammate. All right, next question I got for you. We all got downtime right now. I know myself, I'm binge watching a lot of shows. Is there any TV shows, Netflix shows you're binge watching right now?
Man, I've watched more YouTube.
Yeah.
This over the last month than I've ever watched in my entire life. I'm not TV for me is more noise in the back, so I can maybe read or
right.
I think the one show that I always put on, and people laugh at me for this, is Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, I like that show. It's good.
I'm not a big Netflix guy, but I'm trying. I'm trying. I have not watched one thing about this whole Tiger King thing, and I don't plan to.
Yeah.
What's the other one? Ozark.
Ozark. Yeah.
No clue.
No, I'm guilty of Ozark. Lion King, not Lion King. Lion King, my son likes. Tiger King, my wife likes. Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, Coach, you got 15 minutes to work out. We've all been in that situation. What are you doing?
Oh man, my staff will laugh at me when I say this. I bench press mostly, but if I've got 15 minutes, I'll typically start with kind of like a winning warm up. I'll do like 4 sets of 20 to 25 on about 3 different exercises, and then I'll try to get in like a main lift, whether it be, my days of squat, bench, deadlift have really turned into belt squat, bench, and leg press over the years. So I if I deadlift, I rack pull or something. But I kind of get those high volume warm ups in, and then I try to hit like a main lift for maybe a set of 5, set of 3, set of 2. It just depends on how I feel that day. But I try to get a little bit of a lift in occasionally with my guys, my staff. But they're going 100 miles an hour. That was me when I was their age.
Right.
Mine's changed now.
Yeah, and I'm only 28, and I, my GA, she's just doing like all these workouts, like,
yeah,
it's like 44 exercises, and she's just buzzing through it. I'm like, man, I can't do that anymore. And I'm in my 20s. I'm young, but like I can't do it. I'm sorry.
Right. And I do my best to keep everything balanced out like I do with the athletes, but it's tough. You know how it is. It's tough to find the time sometimes.
No, there's no doubt. All right, Coach, the last one I got for you. Maybe a small school strength coach who you think does a great job, who deserves a shout out.
I've watched the podcast and I thought about this one because I thought, okay, if he asks me this one, what am I going to say? I'll start by saying this. I have spoke a couple times, or I've spoke once at a high school strength conference, and not many college coaches speak of those, but the admiration I have for what good high school strength coaches do is unbelievable. I think I really truly think that those are some of the best strength coaches out there. They just don't get the publicity. They don't get the recognition that they deserve, I feel. I feel that way about small school strength coaches. We have so many things that so many obstacles that we have to deal with, and those kind of things. It's very, very tough. But I'm going to go back to who I mentioned earlier as Mark Garrett at Crown Point High School, which is up in Northwest Indiana, not too terribly far from Chicago. He does an outstanding job, and I don't think gets the recognition that he deserves for it. An amazing Olympic weightlifting coach. But again, at the same time, his kids do such a great job, in terms of the athletics and everything. And again, he's been a huge, huge part of the way I've designed my philosophy, my programming, everything. And I just can't. I don't know if I'd be sitting here talking to you right now if it weren't for him, And there's a lot of other guys that have really helped me along the way. But whenever I need something and I'm pinch or something, and that is exactly who I talk to or go to.
Yeah, and that's great, Coach. And we'll have Coach Preston who interviews our high school coaches. Reach out to him because actually I already made a note of that earlier when you mentioned him because I could tell how much you think of him. So and that's another reason why we do this podcast is to talk about people like that who don't get the recognition and to give them a platform to learn to speak and for us to learn from. So Coach, and again I really appreciate you taking the time to talk today on the Big Time Strength podcast, and I hope obviously first priority that you and your family and all your athletes and everybody is safe and healthy right now, and good luck with everything that's going on, and hopefully whenever we get back to train your athletes, it's a smooth transition for you. And I really, really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. It's been awesome. Like I said, I really, I want to get it out to more and more people about this podcast. You guys do a great job with this, and I think it's very much needed. So again, thanks for having me on. I wish you and your family, health, and we'll get back to work hopefully soon, and we'll cross paths here hopefully come fall.
Sounds good. Thanks, Coach.
All right. Thank you.